Hello, internet world. Thanks for being patient. I rearranged my schedule for the weather today, and it seemed like 3 o'clock, and before that would be the only time to get outside. So I went for a nice little hike. Got home, lo and behold, deluge. All the rain poured from the sky. So that worked out. Today, we're going to work on poetry again. I'm going to put a link in the chat. So I love writing all kinds of stuff. Poetry, creative nonfiction, fiction, fantasy, whatever it is. And I try to give a variety of exercises through these, I guess we'll call them classes. But there is the Recovery Fine Arts Festival coming up. The submission deadline's in August, and they only accept poetry as a written form of art. Of course, if you indulge in the other arts, go ahead and take some pictures of the stuff you do and submit it that way. Side note, you can submit a poem, a painting, and a photograph, so you don't have to stick to just one. Anyways, long story short, so that's why we're coming here for poetry. And today we're going to work with crystallizing moments, I guess is what I would call them. Maybe another way to think of it is zooming in on little pieces of your life. So go ahead and grab a pen or pencil or get ready, open a new file, whatever works for you. Today I'm not going to do a lot of talking before, it'll come in the middle. We're just going to get right to it. So before you start writing, I want your brain already thinking, what is a small moment that feels really special and significant? Obviously, something like a proposal, the date of birth, a wedding day, a day you graduate from a program, you buy a new car. Those are big moments. I'm talking about those really small things, like you wake up in the morning, you're half asleep, you look in the living room and you see your child, who's no longer a child, but turning into a young man, curled up on the couch with the 2 puppies. Like that stuff that just tugs you on the heart and you're not sure why. It could be a moment within a big episode. So say graduation is a big moment in your life. You can take a small moment from graduation. Like the minute I stepped out of the car and saw my father standing for the first time in my entire life with a bouquet of flowers, right? It's not about the whole process of graduation. It's a tiny, tiny little zoomed in crystallizing moment. So although we are writing poetry, I just want to start with journaling. I'm going to type these directions, but you have a couple options. If you're a lister, go ahead and list as many crystallizing, zoomed in moments as you can think of. If you're a journaler or a free writer, you can spend the entire time journaling about one of those moments, trying to recall as many details as possible. So let's say 7 minutes. That's a good place to start. You get to think while I get the timer out. Okay. So 7 minutes thinking about and writing these crystallizing moments. So when I say crystallizing moments, it just means a really specific image, almost like a snapshot that you see in your head, that creates all the feels in you. It could be nothing special per se, like maybe the first moment you smell the coffee roasting, or well, I guess we don't roast the coffee, we brew it, but whatever. Just a moment that grabs you. Got about 5 minutes left. Really what we're going for here is the moments that are small in nature but create big feelings within you. The ones that stick out in your memory. It might actually be a picture. Maybe your memory is a little fuzzy, so you have like a photograph signifying a big event, but they're always, it's like the strange thing. We take those pictures before or after. Prom, which I'm going to speak on even though I never went to. The pictures are usually before prom, but when we look back on our memories, it's, I'm assuming, the actual event itself. So those types of photographs would be really good for crystallizing moments too. Oh man, some loud thunder. Hopefully I keep power throughout this whole thing. Oh, 2 more minutes. Right, another 60 seconds. For any of you just joining us, we are journaling or brainstorming crystallizing moments, specific snapshots of, like a little tiny piece of your day that brings you big feelings. It could be, the moment you park in your driveway after a long day of work and take a sigh, like really small thing. Could be something that happens regularly, or once in a lifetime. The other day I was driving towards Hammondsport, a place I don't often go, and saw a double rainbow, but it was on both sides of the road. So and then it was gone over the top. Like if I looked straight up, I didn't see it. So it was almost like 4 different rainbows for a moment. That would be a cool snapshot too. All right, finish up what you're journaling and put your pen down. Or pencil, or writing utensil. So here's the part where I ask you to set it aside. In a perfect world, you would hit pause, set it aside for like 3 days, and then come back to it. Writing is this really unique battle with the rational mind where it's like, I know what I meant to say, so that's what I see. Whereas when you can step away from it, you understand like what's actually on the paper versus what your brain wanted to be there. So anyways, we don't have that kind of time. This activity was brought to you by 2 things that came across my face, brain, ears? I don't know what to say. Something this week. So one, I watched the movie Soul Surfer, which I had seen before, but I like watching movies more than once. And it's based on a true story about a girl who lost her arm to a shark bite at a very young age, early in her career, and still made it pro, which is just phenomenal story of resilience and dedication. But there's this scene in there where she's at the youth group for her church, and the pastor is showing these pictures like zoomed in really, really close and asking the children what they see, and they can't figure out what it is. And as soon as the lens zooms out, they're like, oh, it's X, it's Y, it's Z. And that's to teach the point when we're really close to things, it's hard to have perspective. So I'm kind of flipping that on its head, but using it to create our writing experience. The second thing that I've been hearing a lot that helped me come up with this activity today is I've been binging on Brene Brown's podcast, Unlocking Us, which is funny because, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. But I'm totally okay with binging because I'm not sacrificing any responsibilities or relationships to do so, and it's bettering my life. So I'm just glad I could use that obsessive process for something good. But at the end of each of her interviews, she asked the people 10 rapid fire questions. And one of them is, what's a snapshot moment in your life that brings you joy? So she just asked them to, off the top of their head, to think of one image that they see in their life that just makes them go, oh. And for me, that's what it's about. I call them crystallizing moments, and crystallizing is a verb. It means to create crystals. Crystals are just neat things to look at and look through. They're hard on the edges, but they're very dynamic. They have many faces. So I'm like, oh, what a cool thing for us to use to talk about our journeys and our lives. Because for me, recovery is just the act of living my life. Not perfectly, but in the best way I can from moment to moment. So although we sometimes talk about recovery period, what was your journey? How did you get sober? Today, I just wanted to look at life because that's recovery, life, being the best version of ourselves we can in this moment and striving to learn more and do better in the next moment. So, crystallizing moments, long story, not so short. That's how we got here. So now we're going to pile on the writing piece. So one strategy you can use as a writer is to zoom in and zoom out. What does that mean? Well, I brainstormed some crystallizing moments. I haven't written a poem, but I'm going to use them to demonstrate how you can do this. So if I zoom in, wake up in the morning, see my son, who's always going to be my little boy, but at 14 is taller than I am, stretched across the couch. His legs are hanging off, but in his arms, he's embracing our dog, who's no longer a puppy, but looks like one while she's asleep, right? Zoom in. Now I'm going to zoom out. And to do that, I have to ask myself, what's so touching about this moment? What does it make me feel? And what does it relate to? Once I can answer those, I can ask the big, big question, how does it apply to life? So zoom in, puppy cuddles on the couch, zoom out. No matter how much things change, they can always stay the same. And it's those small moments at the beginning of the day that remind you of the beginning of life and open up the door to what's to come. So it can be a simple statement or you can go into long descriptions. Another one I wrote, my dad holding flowers at my master's graduation. So crystallizing moment, I'm going to zoom in. There he stood, younger than he will be in the future, but not quite young anymore. Holding flowers for the first time for his youngest and only daughter, who's also younger than she will be in the future, but not young anymore. At the age of 30, she's just graduating with her master's degree. But it means so much because, period. Now we're going to zoom out. Like so many people in her situation, growing up in poverty, in a house where substance use was sometimes misused. She fell through the cracks, dropped out of school, should be another statistic, possibly standing on the side of the street or working a low-paying job to make ends meet. However, there she stands next to her dad with flowers in hand, waiting to walk across the stage that she never thought she would find her footsteps on, because nobody's footsteps had gone before her to show her the way. But here she is talking about and showing others the way. And it all starts with that man holding those flowers with those hands or something. I don't know. I was just that's why I'm a poet, because that's the way my brain works. But I want to help transmit that process to you. So the next part of this process is we zoomed in. Now we need to zoom out. What's the bigger message? So I'm going to write down some questions for you. And while I do, I see Chris saying hi in the chat. Oh, Casa Trinity, miss that place so much. Love you all. Pass on my hellos. But for this activity, we're not quite writing a poem yet. If one comes to you, obviously just go with the flow. But here's some questions for you to think of. What does that moment mean to you? How does it make you feel? What does it remind you of? And then I want you to zoom out. Apply that crystallizing moment to a bigger message. This could be about life, humanity, your journey, happiness, really anything. So go ahead and spend some time either in your head thinking about those answers or actually writing them down. They're in the chat, but I will read them again. So when you take the crystallizing moment, that's the most interesting to you, or the one you wrote about, ask yourself, what does it mean to you? How does it make you feel? And what does it remind you of? All right, here's the hard part, putting it into words. My recommendation, if you're someone who doesn't fall towards poetry most of the time, if that's not your go-to writing outlet, use your go-to writing outlet. So if you're someone who writes paragraphs, write this in paragraph form and then go back and whittle it down, highlight the good stuff and take out the stuff that doesn't fit or, sound good or make your message come across. If you're someone who researches a lot, start with finding an article or a scientific statement or a news piece that's along these lines and use that to get your inspiration. If you're someone who likes puzzles, you can go through like a collage of words, do a found poem. But really, regardless of what process you choose, what I really, really want you to do is start zoomed in on a specific snapshot and then pull it out to the whole wide world. That could be, in my examples, I think I really only went into my life and my journey, but you could go even bigger. Like, what does this mean for being human or humanity? So I'm going to type those directions. You let me know if you have any questions, comments, suggestions so other people watching this either now or later could benefit from your learning too. If you've been here since the beginning, one of the things we've talked about in the past and done a little writing activity on is the six senses. So when you're zoomed in, the more you can capture the sounds, the taste, the smells, the atmosphere, like everything around, the more specific that moment's going to be. The more your reader will feel like they're really there. And then that hooks them and allows you to, pull out, get a bigger perspective, and really deliver that message or life lesson. One of my litmus tests, or a way that I check to make sure my writing is on track, does it make the reader feel feelings? I might read it and feel happy, but if my cousin reads it and feels sad, I'm still achieving my goal. I don't want the reader to feel the feelings I had. I just want them to feel feelings. So if your writing can create a feeling in another human, that's, to me, what poetry really is. I think that's it. Joe shared his crystallized moment. Every time I see Pudgy sit pretty, it reminds me of when he first learned to do that 3 years ago and could still fit in my pocket. That might be a cool way to start with Pudgy now, zoomed in, and then zoom out, talk about all the not all of, but maybe some of the lessons growing with Pudgy has taught you about being human, and then zoom back in at the end with a memory of him 3 years ago, or vice versa. Start with him 3 years ago, all the lessons you learned in raising him, zoomed back into him now. As with all creativity, the world is your oyster. Whatever you want to do for your writing, do it, because you can build on your recovery through this creative expression. And if you're doing what Lisa says, it's not your expression. So just do whatever feels right for you. I'll also say, as always, if you want to email me your poems, I can give you feedback. I can celebrate with you. This is an outlet for me in my own recovery. So I really enjoy writing, and it brings me peace and, just like that sense of serenity and purpose. It would be double or try or tenfold if other people went on that journey with me. So feel free to reach out. I'll put my email in the chat, but it's also on our website. And just let me know if you want me to read it to give suggestions. I can. Or if you just want to share it to celebrate, I'll read it and thank you for letting me read it. Just like I'm going to thank you now for taking some time on your Sunday to be here with me, even though it's a little late. Next Sunday, I am out of town. I'm going camping, so I will not be here, but I'll post maybe one of my earlier ones on the using the senses in your writing, because I think that's really fun and important. Yeah, I love and appreciate you all, and I'll see you around.